After transmigrating into a novel, I decided to become best buddies with the male lead and enjoy life with him. So, what does ABO even mean? One drunken mistake later, I accidentally spent a passionate night with some guy. I went to my best bro for help in finding the person. Strange, though, why was his voice so hoarse today? The hotel room was shrouded in darkness, the lights still off. A pair of hands worked at my buttons. I grabbed the person's wrist. Cool to the touch. Refreshing. It took me a second to realize I was burning up. My feverish skin must have startled him, as he instinctively tried to pull away. Bro, I rasped, struggling to speak. Don't. Just don't. I don't want to do this with a guy. I should have figured out the whole six-gender system by now, after years of living in this world. But I still wasn't used to it. Weird. Why was it so hot? Did I drink too much and somehow end up in Miami? I muttered to myself while trying to take off my clothes, but I was still mindful of the other person in the room. Listen, man, can you just, I dunno, go get another room? I'll cover the cost. He didn't respond. In the darkness, I felt him straddle my lap. Hold on, bro. When I said I didn't want to be with a guy, I didn't mean I wanted to do him instead. Yet my body betrayed me. I wasn't exactly resisting. In fact, we both ended up undressed. The last thing I remembered was his voice, deep and sultry, making my face heat up. And something else. Are you crying? He didn't answer. He simply leaned down and kissed me. The next morning when I woke up, he was gone. $2,000 lay on the nightstand. What the hell? I rubbed my forehead, cleaned myself up, and headed straight for the hotel's security footage. The manager looked apologetic. I'm really sorry, but due to an electrical failure, the footage from that time period wasn't recorded. I frowned. So you have the footage before and after, but just not the middle? What are the odds of that? Seeing my skepticism, the manager had a female staff member lead me to check for myself. Sure enough, the footage I needed was nothing but static. The girl looked nervous, afraid I'd get angry. I sighed and let it go. But I still needed to find that person. After some thought, I called Sean Farrell. He picked up quickly. Yeah. Sean, it's Harrison. Straight to the point, I asked, do you know who sent me back last night after our party? Not sure. Could you ask around? I need to find him. Why? I hesitated. Even though same-sex relationships were normal in this world, it still felt weird to tell my bro about it. So I dodged, just something personal. Don't ask, just help me out, alright? Should be a guy, either a beta or an omega. I'll treat you to dinner if you find him. I was a beta with no ability to sense pheromones, so I couldn't tell what gender he was. But considering he was willing to take the bottom role, he was unlikely to be an alpha. Speaking of alphas, Sean was one himself. Suddenly, I remembered something. Wait, Sean, is your voice hoarse? Silence. For a moment, I thought I heard his breathing quicken slightly. Then it clicked. Oh, I see. You guys went karaoke without me last night, didn't you? What a bunch of jerks. If I hadn't been drinking in his place, I wouldn't have even made it to round 2. Next time, bring me along, man. I've never heard you sing. You must have gone all out, your voice sounds like Donald Duck now. I added, I'll get you some salad later. Just make sure you find that guy for me. I hung up, shaking my head. Sean was as concise as ever. After years of knowing him, I was used to it. Despite his few words, he was reliable. He was the male lead after all. I first met Sean in high school. That was right after I transmigrated into this book. I hadn't read too many novels before, but I made a strategic decision almost immediately. Befriend the protagonist, ride his coattails, and enjoy life. After all, the male lead was usually rich, powerful, and practically untouchable. Sean back then was a quiet loner. No one got close to him, and few even spoke to him. The aura of a destined main character. Classic. I took the first step toward our friendship. Hey, bro, did you understand what the teacher was saying? Mind explaining it to me? Silence fell over the room. Sean looked up, his voice devoid of emotion. You're talking to me? I froze, then cautiously pointed at him while looking around. You guys can see him, right? He frowned, clearly confused by my reaction. Judging by the others' expressions, they could see him just fine. I let out a relieved sigh. Damn, you scared me. The way you said that, I thought you were a ghost. No wonder no one talks to you. Another round of gasps rippled through the classroom. I frowned. What was with everyone today? Their reactions were way over the top. Had I hit a sore spot? Was he bad at academics or something? Scratching my head, I reassured him, no big deal, man. Nothing to be ashamed of. I'll just ask someone else, then come back and explain it to you. I turned to leave. Sit down. I blinked at him. He sighed and added, I'll explain it to you. He explained the material in detail, and I nodded along, absorbing the information. When he finished, I grinned. Damn, that was a great explanation. Thanks, man. Back at my seat, my desk mate slung an arm around my shoulders. Dude, you scared the hell out of me. I shot him a look. What? He's fine. He explains things well, doesn't he? That's just because you goaded him into it. Goaded him? Please, if anyone's getting goaded here, it's you. I pushed him off. For once, my desk mate looked serious. I mean it. Don't you think he's kind of scary? He's always got that icy stare. Feels like he's not even human sometimes. I rolled my eyes. What's he gonna do, eat you? Relax, he's chill. After that, I kept asking Sean for help with studying. Well, mostly I asked, he answered. He never joined gym class. I figured he didn't like sweating, and the teacher didn't seem to care. Sometimes, I'd buy him an ice pop on my way back. You really should get some sun, I told him once, watching as he ate his ice pop while solving equations. His pale wrist rested against the desk, veins visible beneath the skin. Look at you, you're practically reflective. He suddenly asked, why do you keep approaching me? His voice was flat. If you're trying to butter me up, you'd be better off sucking up to my brother instead. You're wasting your time. He didn't look at me, and he hadn't touched his pen since he started speaking. The air grew still. I grinned. Sean, how much was that ice pop? He looked up, clearly thrown off. 50 cents. Cheaper outside the school gates, I said. When I said that, my meaning was clear. If I could win him over with just $1.50, then he really wasn't that hard to please. To be honest, at first, I approached him with an agenda. But the more we spent time together, the more that illusion shattered. What, badass protagonist? He was just an ordinary kid, quiet, reserved, and a little distant. After thinking for a moment, I added, Sean, don't tell me, you don't have any friends? His lips pressed together, and I couldn't tell if he was displeased or just embarrassed. Right when the air grew awkward, I pointed at the ice pop in his hand. Hey, it's dripping. Sean froze, momentarily caught off guard. I quickly directed, suck from the bottom. He did as told. By the time our classmates returned, we had already finished our ice pops. Tossing the stick into the trash, I said, Sean, you should start coming to gym class. We can be partners. If you keep skipping, our poor teacher's going to end up so weak that gym class gets cancelled entirely. I heard him hum quietly in agreement. Sean had never had a deskmate. Then one day, during a seat rearrangement, we ended up sitting together. And from that day on, we never sat apart again. I walked into Sean's office carrying a salad. No one stopped me. Everyone in the company was already used to me, including the receptionist, Susan, who greeted me with familiarity. Mr. Newman, you're here early today. Compared to Sean's background, my family was nothing. Besides, I wasn't even the one managing it. My alpha sister had little expectations for me. As long as I ate, drank, and had fun without trying to start a business, she was fine with it. Looking good today, I greeted back before heading straight upstairs to Sean's office. Stepping in, I placed the salad on his desk. Here's still warm. Despite me interrupting his work, he didn't seem annoyed. He tidied up the documents on his desk, unscrewed the lid of the thermos, and began drinking the soup inside. Did you find the guy yet? I asked. Sean choked on his soup. Coughing lightly, he looked up at me. That fast? You in a hurry? A little, I admitted, even though I was actually going insane over it. I mean, after what happened, I had to take responsibility, right? If I couldn't find him, of course I'd be anxious. What did he do? Steal your kidney or your wallet? Sean had become more sharp-tongued over the years. The old him would never have made a joke like that. I hesitated, unsure whether to tell him or not. If I didn't, I'd be hiding something from my best friend. If I did, it was just too embarrassing to put into words. Sensing my dilemma, Sean changed the topic. Catherine's leaving the country. There's a farewell party tonight. You coming? He paused before adding, I heard she's planning to confess before she goes. I perked up immediately. Of course I'm going. She had invited me, sure, but she never mentioned a confession. Sean really was well informed. The female lead was about to confess to the male lead. This was top-tier drama. I smacked his shoulder, teasing, looks like you're finally getting your big moment. But instead of responding, Sean muttered something under his breath. The scent. Scent? Oh, you mean my clothes? I had showered and changed before coming over. Nodding in understanding, I said, oh, so you can smell it too. I bought a new fabric softener, and for some reason, the scent is super strong. I thought I was the only one who noticed. He said nothing more, silently finishing his soup. Feeling good about my buddy's impending love story, I left the office practically beaming. If those two got married, there was no doubt I'd be the best man. After all, my role in their romance was crucial. Sean watched Harrison's retreating figure. Even after the door fully closed, he kept staring for a moment longer. Then he lowered his head and returned to his work. But the words on the page blurred together. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't focus. With a quiet sigh, he pressed a hand over his eyes. So this is what it means to finally get my big moment? There were only two ways to end an unrequited love. Either both people fall for each other, or you move on completely. Either way, it's closure. And wasn't that what he should want? He already had the best friendship in the world. Thinking of how Harrison had completely washed off the scent of pheromones from his body, Sean gave a bitter smile. He shouldn't be greedy. The farewell party went as expected. Everyone gave their well wishes, hoping Catherine had a smooth journey. I quietly sipped my juice, waiting for the grand finale. Finally, she cleared her throat. The room fell silent. I immediately set down my glass, patting Sean's back in excitement. Here it comes. Sean said nothing, but I noticed his own glass contained juice as well. So he was pretending to be all calm, but in reality, he was too nervous to drink alcohol in case he messed up, huh? Catherine took a deep breath and began. I'm about to leave this place, but I'll never forget everything here, she said. When I transferred in sophomore year, I had no friends. He was the first to reach out to me. He made me feel less alone. When I differentiated into an alpha and felt lost and afraid, he was there to help me through it. I'm not saying this to pressure him into being with me. I just want him to know that, during that time, he lit up my world. I want him to know that someone, because they liked him, tried to become a better person. I felt like a father watching his daughter get married. She used to be so timid, but now she could say all this openly, brave enough to chase after love. Man, this was great. I was getting emotional. Catherine took another deep breath, gathering her courage. Then she declared loudly, Harrison, I've liked you for a long time. What? I slapped my thigh in horror. Girl, you got the wrong name. Back in high school, when Catherine transferred into our class in sophomore year, it only hit me then. Had I accidentally stolen the male lead's designated deskmate? Had I unknowingly blocked my buddy's romance? To make up for it, I often dragged Sean along to hang out with her, hoping to close the distance between them. Catherine always seemed timid, so I made sure to speak gently around her, afraid I'd scare her off. Later on, when we became closer, she confessed. I used to think you were mocking me all the time. It scared me so much I didn't dare talk to you. The day she differentiated, I thought she was suffering from some serious illness. Panicking, I carried her on my back, running like a madman while reassuring her, you're fine. Just stay awake. Meanwhile, Sean handled the hospital fees. Turns out she had just differentiated. I got a lecture on abiobiology after that. Later, someone asked me what my ideal type was. I hadn't given it much thought, so I went with the most generic answer. I don't know. Maybe someone gentle and kind? The guy teasingly nudged me. Like Catherine? I immediately shut that down. Hey, don't start rumors. You're gonna ruin the girl's reputation. I could never date Catherine. Friends' wives were off limits. Oh, I get it now, the guy said with a knowing look. You just don't want to date an alpha, huh? I thought about it carefully. If I ended up with an alpha, regardless of whether they were male or female, wouldn't that mean I'd have to be the one on the bottom? After that thought settled in, I added, maybe. It'd probably be better if it were a girl. Sean remained silent beside me, listening without a word. The second time I helped someone through their differentiation, I was a lot more prepared than before. I wouldn't panic like I had back then. But as the person going through it, Sean was far more overwhelmed than I had expected. For the first time, he lost his usual composure. He went into hiding. By the time I found him, he was biting down on his own wrist, his skin split open, blood streaming down his arm. His face was flushed, his eyes clouded with a feverish haze, and when he spoke, his voice trembled, choked with suppressed emotions. Not the, please, not alpha. He was begging, praying that he wouldn't differentiate into an A. And only then did I realize, if Sean became an alpha, how would he ever be with Catherine? Unfortunately, fate didn't care for prayers. In the end, Sean still became an alpha. I didn't see the big deal, honestly. 2 alphas? That was kind of hot. As for me, my differentiation never came. It wasn't until a routine checkup that my results were finally confirmed. I was a beta. Some people found it hard to believe. How could I be so average? I stared at the test results in silence. Catherine and Sean both seemed like they wanted to comfort me, but before they could say anything, I cut them off. Ugh, male beta just sounds so lame. Sean blinked at me, then let out a quiet chuckle. No one calls it that. I accepted it easily. Honestly, this was the ideal outcome for me. From that point on, the 3 of us were practically inseparable. After all this time, I was finally going to witness them get together. So why did Catherine say my name? Sean tapped me on the back. You've been looking forward to this, haven't you? What are you waiting for? Maybe it was just my imagination, but something about his tone felt off. I got up stiffly, walking toward Catherine like a marionette with tangled strings. The speech I had mentally prepared vanished completely. I opened my mouth, stammering, Catherine, I've always thought of you as a sister. In my mind, she was still that girl who used to cry at the drop of a hat. I was afraid she'd cry now too. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, Harrison, if I get bullied while I'm abroad. Before she could even finish, my expression darkened. I'll hop on a plane and beat the crap out of them, obviously. She laughed. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. That's enough. Thank you. I froze, my arms awkwardly hovering in the air. I haven't even fought anyone yet. You've always looked out for me, she murmured. Back then, now, and in the future too. She had long since stopped being that fragile girl I remembered. She had grown up. After the party, I figured I should explain things to Sean. But how the hell was I supposed to say it? Sorry, bro, the girl you like actually likes me. Are we still cool? I hesitated, but outwardly, it just looked like I was silently following Sean around. Eventually, he lost patience and turned around. What? I blanked for a second, still unsure how to phrase it. Instead, I blurted out what was on my mind. I'm sorry. Sean raised an eyebrow. Oh, what exactly are you apologizing for? I frowned. No, I mean, I should be the one apologizing. It's just about Catherine. I didn't know. I thought she liked you. God, that sounded even worse. Was I an idiot? As I berated myself internally, Sean suddenly took a step closer. I instinctively wanted to step back. But then I thought if he needs to punch me to vent, so be it. So I stayed put. Sean was half a head shorter than me. From this angle, all I could see was the crown of his head, the way his hair trailed down his neck. If I tilted my head just slightly, My lips could touch his hair. Sean. I heard him chuckle under his breath before stepping back. I exhaled, realizing I had been holding my breath the entire time. Seriously. What a messed up sense of humor, he said. What? The scent. His voice was light, almost careless. Catherine left her scent all over you. That night, we said a brief goodbye and went our separate ways. I couldn't smell it myself, nor did I understand what the big deal was. I assumed he was just jealous over Catherine. So I gave a half-hearted explanation about how it must have rubbed off when she hugged me, then ran off to shower. Sean didn't bring it up again. Months passed. It was like nothing had ever happened. I had to admire his ability to let things go. Then one day, my sister called me over. She told me it was time to start considering marriage. Marriage? Me. She nodded. I blinked. Sis, you're joking, right? You're not even married yet. Why are you pushing me into it? I hesitated, then cautiously asked, are we going bankrupt? She didn't answer that, just said, you need to find someone soon. Or at least start dating. And until then, I'm assigning someone to watch you. I thought she'd hire some 6 feet 5 inches bodyguard built like a brick wall. Instead, she sent me a guy named Rourke. A lean, soft-spoken man with delicate features. What was he supposed to be guarding me from? I had no idea what my sister was thinking, but I let him follow me around. So when I visited Sean's office, Rourke was with me. Sean raised an eyebrow when I introduced him. Rourke? The Rourke family? He let out a dry chuckle. Omega? Crap. I had been so focused on the fact that he was a guy that I completely forgot to ask about his secondary gender. I still wasn't fully used to this world's logic. I turned to confirm. Rourke nodded slightly. Since we were already on the subject, I asked, how old are you? Rourke hesitated, then answered, 23. Oh. I nodded. A student? Must be nice to still be in school. I wasn't sure what he read into that statement, but he flushed a little and hummed in response. I continued, got any plans tonight? His eyes lit up. No, nothing at all. Great. I nodded. Just as I was about to suggest something, Sean interrupted. Harrison, if you're gonna interrogate someone, take it outside. Not in my office. Fair enough. He was probably busy with work. I shouldn't have brought an outsider here in the first place. I turned to Rourke. All right, let's go. As we left, I heard something crash to the floor inside Sean's office. Was that my imagination? Sean kept working. Or at least he tried to. If you ignored the fact that he glanced at his phone every 10 minutes. It was long past office hours, yet not once had Harrison contacted him. When his phone finally rang, he picked it up instantly. Catherine. Even with the time difference, she had still called to wish him a happy birthday. You're probably with Harrison right now. Seeing those words, he let out a mocking laugh. Of course she would think that. Every year on his birthday, it was always Harrison who kept him company. But not this year. Because Harrison had a goddamn date with that Omega. Sean scoffed. Maybe he should just work overtime until midnight, let the day pass unnoticed. But in the very next second he shot up from his seat and strode straight to the parking garage. What the hell? What the hell? What the hell? Some random Omega had the audacity to go on a date with Harrison on his birthday? Would they take things further? Why the hell should they? Why the fuck should they? Sean's mind drifted back to the one responsible for putting him in this mess in the first place. That woman. It wasn't his first time dealing with Harrison's sister. In fact, they had plenty of business interactions over the years. But a few months ago, after Catherine left for abroad, he met with her again. This time, it wasn't for business. You want my brother? She looked at him in utter disbelief. Sean took a slow sip from his cup. Yes. I want Harrison. The light atmosphere of negotiation shattered instantly. She laughed as if dismissing it as a joke. President Farrell, please. We're not so desperate that we need to sell our children. How desperate would you have to be? Sean cut in, his voice eerily calm. You know I don't want it to come to that. She stood up. He sees you as a friend. You can't do this to him. He's going to fall in love, get married, have kids, not be some toy you can play with until you get bored. He has the right to choose. Sean's smile faded. Harrison. Falling in love. Getting married. Having kids. With someone else? What a joke. If it had been Catherine, maybe he could have endured it. Catherine was a good person. That was why he funded her studies. If it had been her and Harrison, he would have given them his blessing. But someone else? If it wasn't her, then he'd rather just keep Harrison in his hands. He's not a toy, he said. His words didn't convince her in the slightest. You're a born control freak, and Harrison is too simple-minded. He can't beat you at this game. And now you're coming to me, because he doesn't like you, isn't that right? You think everyone's like your brother and your father, but listen to me, Sean. Harrison is my brother. No matter what, I'll make sure he marries someone he truly loves. Don't make him hate you. And so, Steve appeared. 23 years old. An Omega. From the Rourke family. Wasn't the message obvious? Younger, gentle, obedient. Perfect social status. With him, Harrison would never have to bow his head in a relationship, not in love, not in power. There was no way he'd ever be mistreated. Now, standing in the dim parking garage, Sean reached into his trunk. His fingers brushed against cold, silver handcuffs. He had had enough. He should have never tolerated this for so long. He'll hate you. He actually let that bullshit scare him. Why should he hold back? That was it. Right now, he was going to find Harrison and a flash of headlights hit him, making him squint. For some reason, it jolted him back to his senses. Not far away, Harrison turned off his car lights and tilted his chin at him. Working overtime this late? You giving yourself a raise, boss? It was so late. No wonder Sean had seemed so tense earlier. He'd been swamped all day. Good thing I didn't bother him. He shut his trunk before walking over to the driver's side. What are you doing here? He asked. I stared at him. No way. Don't tell me you forgot. It's your birthday today. I opened the car door. Get in. We're going to Gordon Ramsay restaurants. I grinned. I borrowed Steve's student discount for this. I even gave Steve double pay to take the night off. I wasn't about to bring a stranger to Sean's birthday dinner. Sean, as always, was too low-key for any waitstaff celebrations. He accepted the slice of cake quietly. This reminds me of the first time we celebrated my birthday. I raised a brow. You mean you were dining at Gordon Ramsay restaurants as a kid? Damn, didn't know you were that fancy. He exhaled slowly. No, he said with a sigh. I meant my actual birthday. Sean's official ID didn't have his real birth date. His mother had died in childbirth. Afterward, his father publicly took in his illegitimate son, Clint, and claimed they were fraternal twins. Then, he changed Sean's birthday to match Clint's. When Sean had discovered the truth, everything finally clicked into place. Just to cover up a scandal, his family had never once celebrated his real birthday. The moment I found out, I had slung an arm around his shoulders. All right, say something nice and I'll celebrate it with you every year. He hesitated, opening his mouth like he was about to say something, then closed it again. After a long pause, he finally muttered 2 words. Please. I was so startled that I let go of him instantly. Everyone knew that when a guy said that, it meant one of 2 things. Either he wanted to hear, Daddy, or he wanted to hear, get lost. But then I thought about how Sean didn't really have friends. And somehow that made it understandable. Such an honest kid. So I patted him on the shoulder, and with complete sincerity I said, how about this, on your birthday, I'll take you to Gordon Ramsay restaurants. My treat. I'll make up for every birthday wish you never got. Sean agreed. But no one expected what happened before we even got the chance. He fell. Tumbled down a flight of stairs, breaking his left leg. I briefly considered sneaking him out of the hospital, but Sean refused. So I had no choice but to give up on the idea. On the night of his birthday, I called him. Sean, look outside your window. I heard the curtain being pulled back. I'm looking, he said. What is it? I lowered my voice. Happy birthday. The moment the words left my lips, a sharp whistle pierced the sky. A burst of fire lit up the night, blooming into brilliant colors. Then another. And another. One after the next, an endless cascade of fireworks filled the sky. Through the window, the cityscape was framed like a painting. And tonight, I filled his canvas with light. Only when the last sparks had faded did I finally speak again. Pretty impressive, huh? I got every firework I could find. Sean, I continued, they don't deserve to celebrate your birthday. They never did. From now on, I'll be the one celebrating it with you. Every year. Just us. He stayed silent. His breath trembled. Then, softly, he said, "Do you know what I was just thinking?" Something was shifting, like a train slipping off its designated track. I was thinking about jumping out this window. To go see you. Was he that moved? I grinned, smug. Well, good thing I can predict the future. Guess what, Sean? Look down. I saw his face appear at the window. Lifting my light board, I waved it back and forth. Sean stared at it for a second. Then he burst out laughing. Why the hell is Gordon Ramsay Restaurants wishing me a happy birthday? Duh, I borrowed it from them. Gotta return it later too. Close the window, I added. Don't let the cold in. That was how I celebrated Sean's birthday for the first time. After that, we spent most of them together with Catherine. You never actually got to eat there that first year, I said, half laughing. Seriously bad luck. I even offered to sneak you out, but you said to forget it. He hummed. I just suddenly remembered. I feel like even if my future nights are empty, the fireworks from that day will always be there. I reached into my pocket and slid a small box toward him. Then you might like my gift this year. He opened it. Inside was a glass bead, smooth, round, and completely black. But instead of being disappointed, Sean cupped it carefully in his palm, as if it were something precious. I'll take good care of it, he said. I smiled. You have to hold it up to the light to see what it really looks like, I told him. If you just keep it in your hand, it's nothing but a plain black bead. He hesitated before loosening his grip. A flicker of color flashed across the surface. His eyes widened as he held it up. Against the light, the darkness melted away, revealing streaks of iridescent color. Like fireworks. Figured you're rich now. You don't need anything, so I just made something myself. Fired it in the kiln myself too. Pretty cool, huh? Sean stared at it for a moment before nodding. Yeah, he murmured. It's really amazing. Really? A few days later, Sean sent out invitations. Apparently, he had something important to announce. I put on a suit for the occasion, but no matter how I looked at myself in the mirror, something felt off. Like I was about to sell insurance. When I arrived at the venue, I assumed I'd be the one getting stopped at the entrance. Instead, they stopped Steve. 2 stone-faced security guards blocked his path. Apologies, sir, but you were not invited. I stepped forward. He's with me. But the staff didn't budge. The Rourke family did receive invitations, one of them explained. He must provide proof of the Rourke family's invitation. I paused. Was that how it worked? Were they really recognizing every guest by face? Steve looked troubled. I sighed. Forget it. Come on, Steve, let's go. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Wait, Mr. Lin, we weren't trying to stop you. Of course, you're welcome to enter. I waved a hand. It's fine, it's fine. I'll just tell Sean I'll be late. Don't worry, this isn't on you guys. Turning to Steve, I apologized. My bad for dragging you here without checking first. Come on, I'll take you home. The guards looked like they wanted to say something else. But before they could, a familiar voice cut through the conversation. What's going on? Sean approached us. Why aren't you inside? I gave him a brief rundown of the situation. He considered it for a second before saying, I see. Not a big deal. If he's with you, then he can go in. Still, it wouldn't be a good look to make an exception in front of everyone. So Sean and I entered first, while Steve was led through a different entrance. Only when we stepped into the main hall did I notice something was off. People were staring at us. I frowned, glancing at Sean, then looked down at myself. Crap. I groaned. Yeah, you probably should have thought twice before walking in with you. What's wrong? Sean asked. I nudged his elbow. You look way too good in a suit. Standing next to you makes me look even more like a salesman. He chuckled. Nonsense. I waved him off. Go do your thing. I'm gonna find Steve. After making a full round of the venue and still not spotting him, I pulled out my phone to send a message, only to feel a hand pat my shoulder. Harrison, a familiar voice called out. Congrats, congrats. You and Sean are finally... The guy smirked, waggling his eyebrows. This event is to announce it, isn't it? I deadpanned. What the hell are you talking about? And what's with your face? You got a muscle cramp or something? I was about to walk away when I remembered something. Actually, I have a question for you. I hesitated. It was about that night. The night I couldn't remember. Sean had been helping me look into it, but there had been no updates. After confirming that this guy had been at the party, I asked, that night, do you remember who took me home? His expression shifted into something strange. What are you talking about? He looked confused, almost wary. It was Sean, obviously. I froze. What? He frowned. Come on, are you messing with me? You got wasted that night. Sean took you home before the after-party even started. How would he have been at karaoke with us? I stared at him. My smile stiffened. He went silent. And suddenly I felt cold. You got drugged, he finally said. It was in the drinks Sean took for you. You were completely out of it. But by then, there was only one person who could have taken you home. Sean never let anyone else get close to you. So that person was... No way. My mind reeled, but all I could manage was a single, stunned response. Holy shit. I didn't know what I was going to say to him. But right now, I needed to see Sean. After searching the venue and not finding him, I sent him a message. A reply came swiftly, directing me to the underground parking lot. The garage was cold and empty, the silence pressing against my ears. I rubbed my arms and called out hesitantly, Sean. For a brief second, the setting reminded me of way too many horror movies. Luckily, Sean answered. He stepped into view, looking the same as ever. Unshaken. Even his voice was indifferent as he said, Harrison, turn around. Go back upstairs. I blinked. What? He was the one who told me to come here. What was this sudden act? I opened my mouth to ask when another voice rang out. That's not what we agreed on, dear brother. Sean was shoved forward a few steps. Only then did I notice the knife pressed to his back. Two more figures emerged from behind, blocking my way out. And then I saw his face. I sucked in a sharp breath. Clint Farrell? What the hell was he doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be holed up overseas, too scared to crawl back? Seeing my shock, Clint chuckled. Yeah, I'm back, he said, spreading his arms in mock grandeur. Here to reclaim what's mine. I curled my toes inside my shoes. What a fucking drama queen. My original plan was to deal with you later, he continued. But since you delivered yourself right to me, I won't bother being polite. His gaze turned cold. Now, take off your jacket. Hands up. Turn around. I didn't argue. I unbuttoned my coat, slipped it off, and tossed it aside. My phone, still in the pocket, went with it. Then I raised my hands and spun in a slow circle, showing that I had nothing on me. But Clint wasn't satisfied. Kneel. Sean gave the faintest shake of his head. But Clint dug the knife in deeper, making Sean grunt in pain. I said kneel. Panic tightened around my chest. Without hesitation, I dropped to my knees. Clint smirked, tossing Sean and the knife to one of his lackeys before grabbing a glass of red wine and strolling toward me. Drinking is only proper when old friends reunite, he mused. Shame I didn't prepare a glass for you. You'll have to make do. He tipped the glass over my head. The wine soaked into my hair, dripping down my face, seeping into my shirt. Clint crouched down in front of me. His lips curled. I'll never forget these eyes, he sneered. You broke my hand that year. Bet you never thought this day would come, huh? All that talk about not liking me, please. You just wanted to get back at me for him. He scoffed. He really did raise himself a good dog. I gritted my teeth. Sean's broken leg years ago? It hadn't been an accident. I had overheard Clint bragging to his friends how he pushed Sean down those stairs. I had laughed it off in public. But behind closed doors, I beat the shit out of him. Snapped the very same right hand he used to shove Sean. Didn't they say covering half your face would make you unrecognizable? Guess that trick didn't work. Taking a deep breath, I kept my voice calm. I acted on my own. That had nothing to do with him. You have a problem, take it up with me. Clint circled around me. Then, without warning, he grabbed my arm. A foot pressed against my back, forcing me forward. Pain exploded through my wrist as he twisted it behind me. My breath hitched involuntarily. Clint smirked. An eye for an eye. A hand for a hand. Seems fair, doesn't it? I shuddered, gritting my teeth through the pain. The pressure eased. Clint's hold slackened slightly. He tossed the wine glass aside carelessly. Then, almost absent-mindedly, his fingers skimmed over my back. Over the tensed muscles straining against my shirt. His voice dropped into something amused. So that's why none of the omegas I sent could get close to him. Turns out, this is the kind of thing he wants. Interesting. He let go of my hand. Not really my type, Clint sneered. But I guess I can make do. After all, I am curious to see what kind of face my dear brother will make. The moment his grip loosened, I made my move. My fingers darted toward the shattered glass at my feet. With a sharp inhale, I grabbed a jagged shard and sprang up. Clint was still standing on my back. My sudden movement threw him off balance, giving me the perfect opening. By the time the others realized what had happened, the situation had completely reversed. The cold edge of broken glass pressed against Clint's neck. A single drop of blood slid down. His breath hitched in fear. But that blood wasn't his. It was mine, seeping from where the glass had cut into my palm. Harrison, he forced a laugh. Let's be reasonable. Let's talk. There's nothing to talk about. My voice was ice. Let him go. Or I slit your boss's throat. A shallow cut, and he might live if he was lucky. A deep one, and I guaranteed he wouldn't. Clint's panic grew. No, 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 you don't understand. My father is dead. According to his will, everything belongs to me now. Desperation colored his voice. After today, Sean is nothing. Nothing. You picked the right side back then, sure. But no one wins forever, Harrison. It's time for you to reconsider your choices. I almost laughed. Oh, please. Even when your dad was alive, you two couldn't beat Sean combined. Now you think you stand a chance? I was out of patience. I pressed the glass against his throat, just enough to draw a thin line of blood. The cold bite of it made Clint recoil in terror. Let him go. Now, he shrieked. Sean was shoved forward. Still keeping Clint at knife point, I backed toward the elevator, dragging Sean with me. Clint didn't shut up the whole way, babbling nonsense about how I'd regret this. I didn't listen. The second the elevator doors slid open, I kicked him square in the ass and sent him sprawling. While the others scrambled toward him, I darted inside, pressing the button. As soon as the doors sealed shut and the elevator began its slow ascent, I finally let out a breath. Then immediately turned to Sean. I ripped off his dark coat, and nearly froze at the sight. A deep red stain burned into the fabric. Too much blood. I pressed the coat against his wound, trying to staunch the bleeding. Thankfully, the knife hadn't hit any major arteries. Sean's face was pale, but his voice remained casual. Relax. He wants to lock me up in an asylum. Break me. Humiliate me. No way he'd let me die. I grit my teeth. That psycho. He should be the one in a mental hospital. The thought of Sean nearly dying because of that bastard made my heart pound. By the time we re-entered the banquet hall, no one noticed our return. Everyone's attention was focused on the stage. The announcement of Sean's father's death. The reading of the will. In front of the entire crowd, the lawyer declared, all assets, properties, and shares shall be inherited by his son, Sean Jian. We arrived just in time to hear Clint's strangled scream. That's impossible. He refused to believe it. Refused to believe the father who had always favored him would leave everything to Sean. You did something, Clint spat, his voice frantic. You switched the will. You threatened him. I demand an official review. Sean let out a quiet laugh. You want to know why? He asked. Fine. I'll tell you. Because you were never his biological son. Someone handed over a document. Clint snatched it. The paternity test. Clear as day, no biological relation. For years, his father had been tricked by his mistress. For years, he had neglected his real son for a child that wasn't even his. Clint's face went blank. No matter how much his father had loved him, there was no way he'd leave his inheritance to someone who wasn't even related by blood. Sean's voice was almost soothing. Don't be too upset. He still cared about you in his own way. He gave me everything he had in exchange for your life. He tilted his head slightly. Not that he had much of a choice. Clint trembled. But unlike him, Sean continued, I keep my promises. His voice softened. If you had just stayed put overseas, none of this would have happened. But you had to be stupid, didn't you? Had to come back. Had to make this mess. Ah, my dear brother. He exhaled lightly, his words almost affectionate. Of course I'll spare your life. You'll live, just not outside of prison. Clint finally understood. You set me up, he whispered, eyes wild. You tricked me. You and that lawyer. You lied about the will to lure me back. Then just as suddenly he collapsed onto his knees. His hands clutched at Sean's pant leg. Brother, please, he begged. I was wrong, I was so wrong. Please, I'll never do this again. I'll leave, I'll go abroad, I'll never step in your way again, I swear. Sean crouched before him. His voice was so low it was barely above a whisper. Of course, he murmured. Clint's eyes shone with hope. Really? I sighed, shaking my head. Had he still not figured it out? When Sean spoke in that tone, someone was definitely about to suffer. Sure enough, the next words out of Sean's mouth were, that was my original plan. Clint's face drained of color. But I changed my mind, Sean said. Don't worry, Clint. You won't be going to prison. A small, eerie smile crossed his lips. Because you're mentally ill, of course. Clint's voice wavered. I have what? Sean's expression was calm. You poor thing. The shock of learning you weren't a real feral must have broken you. To the point that you even tried to kidnap and attack me. And look, so many witnesses to confirm it. His voice was almost gentle. I'm afraid, dear brother, that you won't be leaving that mental hospital anytime soon. Outside, sirens wailed. A commotion in the crowd. The police. An ambulance. Had someone called them? Or had Sean planned this from the start? In Clint's stunned silence, Sean delivered his final blow. With a careless shrug, he announced, I'll be donating everything my father left behind. Clint jerked his head up in horror. Sean chuckled. Come on, did you really think I wanted his leftovers? He leaned down slightly, whispering one last remark. I was just baiting you. Then, standing tall before the entire hall, he added, like father, like son, both idiots to the very end. After everything, we ended up in the hospital. Sean's wound needed a few stitches. My entire right hand was wrapped in bandages. While sitting there, I made a quick call, instructing the staff to make sure Steve got home safely. Before I could say much, Steve snatched the phone. Don't worry, Harrison. He'll make sure I get home in one piece. Right. In the background, I heard the staff's deadpan response. Steve sighed dramatically. Sorry, Harrison, but I found love. I'm quitting. Tell Miss Lynn I'm sorry for not completing my mission. Then, just like that, he hung up. I stared at my phone. What the hell? What mission? Wasn't he supposed to be keeping an eye on me so I wouldn't cause trouble? And I didn't cause trouble, did I? Sean's voice cut through my thoughts. You seem very concerned about him. I shrugged. He's an Omega. Making sure he's safe is just common sense. Sean's tone darkened. Do you like him? What? Absolutely not. I denied immediately. Steve's a good kid. I see him as a little brother, that's all. Sean scoffed. You seem to have a lot of little brothers and sisters. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then out of nowhere, he said, about tonight. Aren't you going to ask me anything? My breath caught. So he had noticed what I was thinking. I lowered my head, feeling a twinge of guilt. Sean, did I mess things up for you? I asked hesitantly. Did I ruin your plan? Slow you down? He didn't answer right away. I started to panic, until I looked up and met his eyes. Tears. His eyes were wet. I freaked out. Wait, why are you crying? I must have really screwed up. Was the fallout from tonight that bad? I'm sorry. I swear I'll fix it. Just tell me what I can do. Sean cut me off. Aren't you afraid? His voice was soft. I manipulated people who've been in my life for years. I used you in my plans. I led you straight into danger. Doesn't that scare you? I blinked. Then I said with complete sincerity, no. I leaned back and exhaled. My only thought the entire time was, damn, Sean is a genius. He completely played those bastards. They didn't even know what hit them. Scum like them didn't deserve to be called his family. I met Sean's gaze and said seriously, don't feel bad, Sean. They weren't worthy of you. He nodded slowly. Then, after a beat, his eyes narrowed slightly. You said, again. My body went rigid. Sean's voice was sharp. You already know about that night. I realized there was no escape. Lowering my head in surrender, I muttered, but there's gotta be some misunderstanding, right? Like, you were drugged too? Sean let out a short laugh. Harrison, what kind of drug would leave you unaffected? His voice turned mocking, but make me, an alpha, willingly take the bottom? I stammered. Before I could string together a response, he grabbed my chin and kissed me. Wait. I barely got a word out before he silenced me again, pushing me back. No waiting. He knelt between my legs, pinning me in place. It hit me then. The difference between an alpha and a beta. The raw strength. The power imbalance. A moment later, he pulled back. I wanted to shrink into the chair from embarrassment. Sean's voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. Harrison, he said, I've liked you for a long time. And now that you know, what's your answer? After that night, Harrison didn't see Sean for several days. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. But inside, Sean was restless. Had he bet wrong? He had been the one to make sure Harrison found out the truth. If he hadn't wanted him to know, then Harrison never would have. His plan had been simple. First, he'd make Harrison realize that he was the one from that night. Then, just as the shock settled in, Clint nearly took his life. The double impact would force Harrison to confront his feelings, to blur the line between friendship and love. But things hadn't gone as planned. He hadn't anticipated that Harrison had already taken revenge on Clint for him. Hadn't expected Harrison to get tangled in his schemes. Even so, he took the gamble. That in the wake of danger, Harrison would realize. But now, it seemed he had lost the bet. Sean pulled open his desk drawer. Inside lay a pair of silver handcuffs. And used. A backup plan. Sean sighed and shut the drawer. His gaze shifted to the glass bead sitting atop his desk. The gift from Harrison. It shimmered under the light, colors shifting like fireworks. Plan B. Not control. Not confinement. But letting go. If Harrison could find happiness without him. Sean chuckled bitterly. As if he could ever bring himself to hurt him. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. I had walked into this office 100 times before. But tonight, my hands were shaking. Sean, I said, voice firm. I need to tell you something. He hummed in acknowledgement, not looking up. But I noticed. His eyes hadn't moved from the same page for a while. For a second, it felt like nothing had changed. Like we were still high school kids. Back then, I had walked toward him without hesitation. Now, I wouldn't run away either. I've been thinking a lot, I admitted. And I think, I like you. He gave a dry laugh. Oh. He echoed my past words mockingly. You like me? And what exactly do you like? My kindness? My gentleness? He smirked. Anyone who hears that would think you've lost your mind. I met his gaze. Then explain this. I leaned forward, gripping the desk. Why is it that no one ever called me your lackey? Why, despite our difference in status, no one ever looked down on me? Because you didn't let them. You made time for my birthdays, every single year. You helped my family when we needed it, but you never once made us feel like it was charity. You even funded Catherine's education in secret, because you knew our pride wouldn't allow us to accept it openly. You think I didn't notice? Sean, you are kind. You are good. And I see all of it. I pulled a small box from my pocket. Inside were 2 rings. This, I said, is why I've been gone these past few days. I took a breath. We should get married. Sean stared. Then, slowly, he took one of the rings, sliding it onto his finger. Perfect fit. Lifting it to his lips, he pressed a reverent kiss against the metal. His voice dropped to a whisper. Harrison, he murmured, I don't give people a chance to regret. In response, I took the second ring and slid it onto my own finger. Sean's gaze softened. Really, he whispered, you are chained to me now. I frowned. What? He shook his head. Nothing. Just wondering what gift I should bring when we visit your sister.
Thanks for stopping by. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos.